The courtroom was silent, heavy with anticipation. Cameras were allowed only for limited coverage, but the audio was streaming live. Reporters filled the back rows, pens ready, recorders blinking. This wasn't a normal day at the Supreme Court. Something felt different. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, known for her sharp mind and fearless voice, stood at the podium. The case was about AI surveillance, how it targeted marginalized communities using flawed data and hidden algorithms. It had divided the nation. Some called it a necessary tool for public safety. Others, like Jasmine, called it digital discrimination. Jasmine wasn't even supposed to be here. She wasn't part of the legal team, but after months of pushing Congress and being ignored, she had submitted a request to speak as an amicus. To the surprise of many, the court approved it. Some believed it was a political move. Others believed someone inside the system wanted her voice heard just once. She began slowly, clearly. "This is not just about technology," she said. "It's about trust. About how our government uses invisible tools to decide who is watched and who is left alone. About how algorithms can inherit racism when they're built on unjust histories." The room shifted. Some justices listened with interest. Others stiffened. Then came the line that made people stop breathing. Every biased data set, every flawed arrest record, every surveillance trigger, it all comes from somewhere. This isn't justice. It's a mirror reflecting our worst truths. Justice Sotomayor leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Her voice, calm but sharp, cut through. "Ms. Crockett, this is a courtroom, not a political stage." The pause was ice cold. Reporters glanced at each other. Jasmine didn't blink. Her voice steady, she said, "With all due respect, Your Honor, the Constitution was never apolitical." Gasps echoed. A clerk dropped a pen. One reporter muttered, "Did she just say that?" And then the feed was cut. Official explanation. Technical difficulty. But within seconds, clips were already online. Someone inside had been recording. The moment exploded on social media. Hashtag Jasmine vs. Sotomayor. Hashtag the Constitution speaks. Hashtag let her speak within the hour. Newsrooms were in chaos. Headlines rolled in. Congresswoman defies court tradition. Unscripted moment shakes Supreme hearing. Crockett calls out constitutional silence. But while the public focused on the words, someone else was watching the system behind the moment. At a private media server room 2 blocks from the Capitol, a junior technician was running maintenance when he noticed a flagged file marked CJ-intercept memo.v3. It had been buried under security logs, mislabeled and oddly timestamped. A week before the hearing, he opened it. Inside was a draft communication from an unnamed clerk to the Office of Legal Counsel. It contained clear language, recommendation, deny Ms. Crockett's amicus appearance based on procedural conflict, exposure risk too high, media timing unfavorable. Urge reconsideration of court invitation. The technician stared at the screen. Then, without thinking, he clicked export and dropped it anonymously to a secure press inbox already known for whistleblower leaks. 3 hours later, a redacted version of the memo appeared on a late-night political blog. The headline: Read, leaked memo suggests Supreme Court tried to block Jasmine Crockett's speech within minutes. It spread. Cable news picked it up. The story had already jumped from a courtroom disagreement to something far deeper. Someone somewhere had tried to keep her silent, but it was too late. Jasmine had spoken. And now the nation was listening. The leaked memo hit Washington like a thunderclap. Morning news anchors couldn't keep up. Every network led with the same words. Was Jasmine Crockett's appearance nearly blocked by the Supreme Court? By mid-morning, the story had swallowed the Capitol. Pundits on both sides scrambled to frame it. Some defending protocol, others pointing to the memo as proof of a broader pattern. The White House issued a cautious statement. The judiciary must remain independent, but transparency is vital. That did little to calm the public. Inside Jasmine Crockett's office, things were moving faster than the headlines. She sat at her desk, staring at the transcript of her own speech. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Reporters, lawyers even. Foreign diplomats wanted a comment. But she remained silent, not out of fear, out of calculation. Her chief of staff, Malik, paced the floor, a tablet in his hand. Jas, it's real. The metadata on the memo checks out. It was authored 3 days before the court approved your appearance. She didn't respond. Malik leaned forward. This wasn't just protocol. Someone wanted you out of that courtroom. She looked up. Then we find out who. At that very moment, across town, in a secure government communications office, an internal crisis was unfolding. The Supreme Court's administrative team had launched a quiet internal audit. Only a handful of people had access to that memo. And even fewer knew how to plant it so deep in the digital system without leaving fingerprints. One name kept coming up. Assistant Clerk Natalie Rivas. She had recently requested leave, citing health reasons just a day after Jasmine's court appearance. But her access logs showed she had reviewed files connected to the AI surveillance. Docket 3 times after hours. Justice Sotomayor sat quietly in her private chambers as her aide relayed this information. She didn't speak. She simply looked out the window at the protesters gathering at the foot of the court steps. Most carried signs reading, "Truth is not protocol," she finally said. "Call her in." While that storm brewed behind closed doors, Jasmine was headed into another one. CNN had requested an exclusive interview. She had refused at first, but after the leak, she agreed on one condition. It must be live. No edits, no delay. The network cleared space for a primetime slot. That evening, the country sat down to watch. The interview opened calmly, but the host didn't waste time. Congresswoman Crockett, did you know about the memo before your appearance? Jasmine shook her head. No, but I'm not surprised it exists. Do you believe the court tried to silence you? I believe someone inside it was afraid of what I might say. Okay. And that fear tells us more about this system than any ruling ever could. Then came the moment no one expected. The host leaned in. We have confirmation that the memo came from an assistant clerk named Natalie Rivas. She's reportedly disappeared from her residence. Do you know her? Silence. Jasmine blinked. Yes, she said softly. We were law interns together. Years ago, gasps were audible in the studio. The host didn't speak. The control room went wild. Jasmine exhaled. She was brilliant, quiet, and brave. Are you saying she leaked the memo on purpose? I'm saying she knew. The stakes, the screen split. On one side, Jasmine. On the other, security footage leaked just hours before of Natalie Rivas slipping out of a service entrance near the court. A duffel bag on her back, no trace since. The interview ended in silence. Twitter exploded. Hashtag where's Natalie hashtag. She tried to warn us. Hashtag Jasmine knew back at Jasmine's office. Malik stared at the screen, stunned. You didn't tell me you knew her. She never told me what she was doing, Jasmine replied. But now we know why I got that podium. She gave it to me. There was a long pause. Then Jasmine said, and they're going to try to take it back. Hours after the live interview, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her office. Lights dimmed, the Capitol dome glowing outside her window. The room buzzed faintly with energy. Her mind wasn't on politics anymore. It was on Natalie Rivas, the intern she hadn't seen in over a decade, now a missing figure at the heart of a national firestorm. Malik entered with 2 phones pressed to his chest. Okay, Jas, it's getting heavy. A source from DHS says they've classified Natalie's disappearance as national security adjacent. That's spookspeak for they're watching everyone she ever emailed. Jasmine looked up, including me. He nodded. A chill passed between them. Jasmine stood and walked toward the window. They'll paint her as unstable, a rogue clerk. But she knew something, Malik. Something big. And she risked everything. To let me speak, Malik hesitated. And now what? You want to play detective? No, she said. I want to play witness, because she trusted me with the truth.
Okay.
Now I have to follow it. Meanwhile, just outside D.C., in a grimy motel off Route 50, Natalie Rivas sat on the edge of a bed, phone powered off, curtains drawn. A battered flash drive rested in her hand. On the motel TV, Jasmine's interview played again, Natalie's name on the news ticker. The word traitor floated on more than one network. She muted the sound. Her laptop screen glowed. A secure file decryption software loaded slowly. The contents of the flash drive, the one she smuggled out before resigning, weren't just administrative memos. They were records of internal votes, flagged surveillance abuse complaints. And worst of all, an off-the-record legal interpretation drafted months earlier suggesting certain data collection policies targeting minority communities could be quietly upheld under judicial discretion. Buried racism, coded in legal language, protected by silence. She leaned back, her hands trembled. In the heart of D.C., Jasmine received a message. Not an email, not a call. A sealed envelope slid under her office door. Inside was a single sentence. Typed, "Check the art gallery where we first argued about constitutional ethics." Jasmine's heart stopped. She remembered that place, the Smithsonian exhibit with the torn Constitution mural. They'd been interns arguing like young idealists. Natalie believed the system could be reformed. Jasmine believed it needed to be rebuilt. Jasmine called Malik. "Cancel everything. I need a driver. No police." 30 minutes later, they were there. The gallery was closed, but one side door was unlocked. Inside, everything was dark except the light above the mural. And there, she was, Natalie. Skinny, pale, hair longer. But it was her. The two women locked eyes. No hug, just truth. "I have documents," Natalie whispered. "Proof the surveillance policies were protected by secret votes, and that your invitation to the court was almost pulled." Justice Sotomayor didn't sign that someone used her authority without telling her. Jasmine's stomach twisted. "You're saying someone impersonated a justice." "No, I'm saying a shadow protocol inside the system authorized it. Legal but hidden. A judicial firewall." Malik stepped back. "That's beyond illegal. That's a coup in slow motion." Natalie handed over the flash drive. "There's more. Backup locations if I disappear again. Don't go to the press. Go international." A noise, glass breaking outside. Natalie's eyes widened. "They found me." Jasmine turned. "Malik, we move now." The three bolted through a back corridor, out into the alley. Black SUVs had already pulled into the front of the museum. No sirens, just quiet urgency, the kind used for operations no one is supposed to see. They ran, ducking into side streets, until they reached a waiting car. Jasmine shoved Natalie into the back seat. "Go," she yelled. The car tore down the road, vanishing into the DC night back in the alley. Jasmine pulled out her phone and sent a single encrypted message. "Package secure. Going dark." She turned to Malik. "We're not in politics anymore," she said. "We're in a war of truths." The following morning, America woke to silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of news. Jasmine Crockett's confrontation in the Supreme Court, which had gone viral overnight, had suddenly vanished from major news sites. The clips were pulled, hashtags shadowed, comment sections frozen. CNN aired reruns. MSNBC cut to stock market analysis. Even Twitter searches brought up vague content, not available messages. Jasmine, now underground with Malik and Natalie, stared at the blackout in disbelief. "They're erasing it," Malik said quietly, scrolling through his phone, like it never happened. "They can't erase a live broadcast," Jasmine snapped. "Millions saw it." "But millions can be made to doubt what they saw," Natalie whispered, pulling her hoodie tighter. "That's what they're testing now, digital memory warfare. The algorithm is the battlefield. They were holed up in an old bookstore turned safe house, one of Jasmine's few off-grid spots left from her activism days. Dusty shelves, blackout curtains, no cameras. Smelled like ink and forgotten ideas. Natalie sat on the floor with her laptop, decrypting the next layer of files from the flash drive. Jasmine paced. Her mind buzzed. The system wasn't just corrupt, was coordinated. Someone had pulled strings across platforms, across agencies, and whoever it was had influence inside the judicial system. Suddenly, Natalie froze. "I found it." Malik leaned in. "What?" She turned the screen. On it was a private directive from the Federal Judicial Conference, a body that oversees judicial conduct. The document was marked internal only. It referenced a program called Operation Equinox. It's a crisis control protocol, Natalie explained. When public trust in the courts reaches a certain threshold of danger, a select committee can trigger Equinox. It allows for emergency content modulation, even across media, in the name of preserving institutional integrity. In English? Jasmine asked. They can legally manipulate news flow if they think the perception of the court's legitimacy is in jeopardy. Jasmine sat down hard. So what I said, what happened in that courtroom wasn't just inconvenient. It was destabilizing, and they reacted like a system under attack, Malik said. Jasmine's phone buzzed. One line of text from an encrypted source. One outlet refused to comply. Turn on channel 11 at 8 p.m. That night, huddled in the dark with a cracked old TV hooked to an antenna, they tuned in to an independent station based in Chicago. No flashy graphics. Just a news anchor sitting straight, nervously, with her hair slightly out of place, raw. We are aware of the legal pressures being placed on media outlets regarding the Supreme Court events of the past 48 hours, the anchor began. We have reviewed unaltered footage and verified sources. In the interest of transparency and democracy, we will now play in full the unedited Supreme Court address by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And just like that, tit aired again. Uncut. Jasmine's words, Sotomayor's interruption. The moment she said the Constitution was never apolitical, Jasmine's face flickered on screen. Live, real, irrefutable. The line lit up in the station's background. Calls flooded in. The anchor's voice cracked. "We have. Breaking. A DOJ letter has just arrived at our office. We are being asked to cease broadcast and surrender footage. Our lawyers are reviewing." Natalie whispered they'll shut it down. But they didn't. The station stayed live for 41 minutes. Long enough for someone to screen record, clip, download, upload again. The moment went viral again, lonely, this time faster. Because people remembered it, and now they had proof. Hashtag Jasmine returns. Hashtag courtroom truth. Hashtag the blackout was real by midnight. Members of Congress were tweeting support. Even conservative senators were calling for hearings into media manipulation. Foreign outlets Al Jazeera, BBC, France 24 and stories on American censorship. The equilibrium had broken. But Jasmine wasn't safe. Now they'll come harder, Natalie warned. This wasn't about surveillance anymore. You became a symbol. Jasmine looked out the window. Protesters were gathering again in D.C. Someone was holding a sign that read unapologetically truthful. She turned to Malik. "It's time we go louder. Not just inside the system, outside it." "How?" "We give the people what Equinox fears most." She held up the rest of the decrypted files. Pages and pages of legal backdoors, secret judicial votes, AI suppression orders. We give them the full truth. And then she smiled for the first time in days. Because the system had tried to silence her and failed. Now she was going to speak louder than ever. Jasmine Crockett stood in the middle of the darkened bookstore. The smell of ink and old leather grounding her as the world outside spun into chaos. The independent broadcast that re-aired her confrontation in the Supreme Court had changed everything. Across the nation, questions were exploding. Why had every major network gone silent? Who authorized the blackout? What else was being hidden? But the real earthquake hadn't hit yet. Natalie hunched over her laptop in the corner, fingers flying. Malik watched the window, radio in hand, listening to chatter from protest organizers and encrypted activist groups. The streets of D.C. were swelling again, only this time. It wasn't just activists, veterans, professors. Even former federal workers were joining, and they all wanted one thing: answers. Then Natalie spoke. I cracked it. The full Equinox file. Jasmine walked over quickly. On the screen were layers of internal memos, time-stamped calls, redacted notes, and, beneath it all, a name. Justice Alan Merrick. He was the swing vote on nearly every AI and surveillance case in the past 10 years. Publicly moderate, privately. The documents told a different story. He's not just a participant, Natalie said. He authored the original draft of the Equinox Protocol and, wait, this signature. He approved the suppression of your inclusion in the Supreme Court hearing. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. So Sotomayor trying to cut me off wasn't. About courtroom decorum. She was following orders. And there's more, Natalie added. Look at this line. She pointed to a scanned memo dated just a week before the hearing. In case of unapproved media escalation, activate. Project Shard. Jasmine froze. She'd heard that phrase before. Project Shard. That's DHS code for targeted digital deconstruction, Malik said, stepping in. They take a voice like yours and break it into pieces. Deepfakes, fake articles, fake tweets. Make people believe you said things you didn't, or didn't say what you actually did. They don't just silence you, Natalie whispered. They fracture you. Jasmine felt the weight hit her chest like a stone. Then we need to move faster than they can twist it. That night, they made the decision to leak the full Equinox file. They didn't go to a major outlet. Instead, they sent it to 3 trusted sources at once: Scandinavian Whistleblower Collective, an African investigative newsroom, and a decentralized journalist hub made up of war reporters and documentarians. Within 2 hours, hashtag Project Equinox files began trending in 14 countries. In the leaked documents, direct communications between senior justices and intelligence officials. Protocols for media blackout triggers disguised as courtroom security. Responses. Evidence of bias hidden in AI enforcement data. The court's decision to bury it. And a chilling final page marked confidential. A plan to reform the Constitution's digital interpretation. Clauses by 2032 without a public vote. By sunrise, the White House had issued a statement claiming the documents were being reviewed for authenticity. But it was too late. Europe called for a UN inquiry. Canada suspended its intelligence data sharing with the U.S., even the International Criminal Court issued a statement demanding transparency from the American judiciary. But it was at home where the fuse burned. Hottest, massive crowds surged outside the Supreme Court. Protesters held digital candles, chanting Jasmine's name. Inside, 5 justices canceled appearances. Justice Merrick was moved to an undisclosed location. And still, Jasmine wasn't satisfied. Let's hit the live broadcast again, she said. It's time on our terms. No edits, no cuts. Malik hesitated. If you want to go live while federal agencies are watching every channel, I want them to see what they've tried to bury. And so, using a satellite uplink from an underground signal, Jasmine went live face raw, voice steady. She didn't rant. She didn't rage. She spoke like someone holding a mirror to power. The truth is not a threat, she said, unless power is built on lies. I didn't come to destroy the court. I came to remind it who it serves. Then she held up a final piece of the file, the internal message where her name had been, redacted from the official Supreme Court invite list. a congressional representative erased by a court she had helped defend with legislation. "This," she said, "is how democracy dies quietly by editing truth out. Not today." Her message was simple, but its echo would be anything but quiet. By the time she ended the feed, 10 million people had watched live. And across the country, a new question emerged, not whether Jasmine Crockett had challenged the system, but whether she was the only one brave enough to finish the fight. The morning after Jasmine's explosive live stream, the Supreme Court building stood under the harsh eye of global media. Drones hovered above, and satellite trucks crowded Constitution Avenue. Every anchor, every outlet, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera played this same loop. Jasmine Crockett holding up a redacted memo with her name blacked out. It wasn't just scandal anymore. It had become an international crisis. Inside, the building was no longer functioning as a court, it was a bunker. Justice Sonia Sotomayor hadn't been seen in 36 hours. Justice Alan Merrick had vanished. The official line was that Merrick was in a secure location for his safety, but Jasmine's team had reason to believe otherwise. Natalie had tracked encrypted data bursts to a private airfield in Virginia just hours after the Equinox file leaked. The plane, unregistered. Its destination, unknown. "Either they're hiding him," Malik said, "or someone's pulling strings bigger than we imagined." Jasmine didn't respond right away. She stared at the screen, showing a slow zoom image of a printed signature. Alan Merrick's approval of the surveillance policy targeting Black and immigrant communities through AI enforcement. He had signed it 5 years ago, under pressure. "Under someone's orders," she whispered. "Find out who leaned on him." But just as Malik opened his laptop, the room's lights flickered. The signal dropped. Then came the noise, static. And a voice, Congresswoman Crockett. "We've seen enough. We'd like to speak." Natalie froze. The voice wasn't broadcast. It was piped directly into their network. "Who is this?" Jasmine demanded. Silence. Then another voice. This one older, wearier. "Not everything was done with ill intent. Some of us were just trying to keep the country from falling apart." Malik muted the feed. "That's Merrick. I'd bet my life on it." Jasmine stared at the screen. "He's not hiding. It's being used." They traced the signal to an old Cold War-era government site in rural Maryland. Dan intelligence. Retreat base long believed to be decommissioned. Jasmine made a decision that even Natalie couldn't talk her out of. "We're going there," she said. Now, the drive was fast and quiet. Jasmine rode in the back, reading transcripts of AI trial testimonies that never made it into the official court record. Hundreds of names, flagged by algorithms for pre-criminal tendencies. It wasn't just profiling. It was digital redlining. It's constitutional discrimination written in code. The sun was low when they reached the gates. Malik hacked the perimeter's outdated system. They slipped in quietly, but what they found inside wasn't a covert tech lab, it was a staging ground. Dozens of federal workers, tech experts, even military analysts. Monitors tracked social media sentiment. Real-time analytics displayed trending hashtags beside national threat assessments. And in the center, in a glass-walled office, Justice Merrick. He looked nothing like the man Jasmine had studied. His face was sunken. His hands shook. When he saw her, he stood. "I expected you'd come. Who brought you here?" Jasmine asked coldly. He didn't answer right away. Then, "You know who?" "The same people who told me what to sign, when to dissent, and when to disappear." "The surveillance plan. The media blackout. The edits to the Constitution," Jasmine said, her voice low. "You didn't write them. You just stamped them." "And when I stopped stamping, I became a risk," he said. "They said I'd destabilize public trust in the court. That my silence was patriotic." Jasmine stepped closer. "So you hid and let us burn." Merrick didn't flinch. "No, I waited. Because the only way to stop this was to prove it." And now, because of you, we can. He handed her a drive. This is the real Equinox protocol. The version Congress was never shown. The version no one has ever seen, not even the president. Natalie scanned it. Layers upon layers of redacted policies. Target regions. Auto-classification. Lists deep bias woven into every decision-making process. But the last file was the most disturbing. It's 2026 forecast. Societal disruption simulations. Jasmine scrolled through it slowly. Her fingers clenched tighter with every slide. Mass protests triggered by AI misclassification. False arrests based on faulty data. Manipulation of court cases to pacify political unrest. The rollout of ComNet's automated psychological suppression protocols designed to control emotion-triggered civic behavior. They're not reacting to chaos, Jasmine said. They're engineering it. Suddenly, alarms blared. The room shifted. Monitors blinked red. They found us, Malik said. Merrick stepped back. Take the drive. Go now. And when the nation sees it, tell them the truth. I was too afraid to say. As they fled through the woods, the sun fully set behind them. Sirens echoed in the distance, but Jasmine felt no fear. She had what she needed, the last piece. Now the nation would know the truth. But the question was, would it survive it? The final countdown didn't begin in silence. It began with a countdown clock on a hacked news fed every major cable network suddenly interrupted. CNN, Fox, Al Jazeera, MSNBC, even C-SPAN. Each one flickered into a black screen, then white. Text appeared. The Equinox file goes public in 3 o'clock minutes. At first, people thought it was a drill or a prank. But then Jasmine Crockett's face appeared live from the Capitol press room. No preamble. No anchor. Just her and the raw glare of truth. Behind her stood Natalie Malik, 2 federal whistleblowers, and shockingly Justice Alan Merrick. He looked older than before, but there was no mistaking the guilt in his eyes or the weight in his stance. He'd come to confess. This isn't a leak, Jasmine said, voice firm. This is a necessary exposure. What you're about to see is not just policy. It's premeditated oppression. And it was signed, sealed, and buried by the highest levels of power. The screen shifted to the Equinox protocol. Documents unscrolled live. Emails, internal memos, simulation data, the predictive policing models. Code-level instructions for AI surveillance, specifically biased against racial, immigrant, and political dissidents. The ComNet directive marked for 2026 rollout hit hardest. In real time, chat feeds exploded. Hashtags roared. Hashtag Equinox Protocol. Hashtag Jasmine Dinot, blink hashtag Supreme Reveal. Hashtag the court was complicit. Then came the part no one expected. Natalie, having decrypted the final layer of the drive Merrick gave them, displayed a series of video depositions. Secretly recorded conversations between judicial clerks and intelligence officers. Voices confirming knowledge of systemic bias. One voice, unmistakable, belonged to a high-ranking senator. We had to push it through. America wasn't ready for chaos, but we were. The next voice stunned the world. It was Justice Sonia Sotomayor. I warned them. I told them this would not hold under scrutiny. But they threatened to bury my dissents, so I stayed quiet. That's on me. The courtroom gasped. But this time it wasn't just a metaphor. The Supreme Court, already under siege by public outrage, halted all operations. Within minutes of the broadcast, protesters surrounded the marble steps. Military-grade fencing was deployed, but it didn't stop the movement building outside and online. In cities from Chicago to Nairobi, people marched. In Berlin, Parliament paused to request a formal investigation into U.S. digital policy and international data manipulation. In London, protesters camped outside the American embassy chanting Jasmine's now iconic line, "The Constitution was never apolitical." Back in D.C., the White House held an emergency session. No spokesperson could spin the leak. Every press secretary simply repeated, "No comment at this time." Inside, panic roared. The president hadn't been briefed on equinox, not fully, or so he claimed. But Jasmine wasn't done. 2 days later, she appeared before a special congressional hearing. She didn't just call for resignations. She called for reforms that would shock the political landscape for a generation. Mandatory algorithm audits, full public transparency in federal data use, protection for whistleblowers as constitutional guardians, and an independent civilian-led tribunal to oversee AI use in all government agencies. And in the final moment, standing alone before the camera, she delivered the sentence that would become history. We cannot digitize justice until we humanize power. The vote was tight. Corruption dies hard. But Jasmine didn't need to win every vote. She had already won the court of public conscience. A week later, Justice Merrick resigned. 2 senators were indicted. And Equinox was dismantled in its entirety, its technology placed under international review. But the real shift wasn't just legal, it was spiritual. For the first time in decades, the American people had watched a system shake. Not because it collapsed, but because it was pushed by truth. And in the weeks that followed, as the nation recalibrated, one thing became clear. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just stunned the Supreme Court. She had awakened a generation, and that generation was not going back to sleep.